Issues facing higher education, next on a special edition of Behind the Headlines.
This is Behind the Headlines, with behind-the-scenes analysis on issues affecting Pennsylvanians, sponsored by the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to a special edition of Behind the Headlines. We're here today at the Conference on Labor in Higher Education, sponsored by APSCUF and PSEA. Professors from across the state have come here to Harrisburg today to discuss the challenges and trends facing higher education. Our first guest is Mr. Steve Hicks. We're here talking about trends facing higher education. Welcome, Steve.
Nice to see you again, Maura.
Nice to have you here. So tell us a little bit about APSCUF and what your role and mission is.
All right. APSCUF is the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, and we represent the faculty and coaches at the 14 state-owned universities in the Commonwealth. I could list the 14, but we don't have that much time.
No.
But our mission is to do collective bargaining for the 6,000 members we have, but also as an association, we have a lot of interest in higher ed issues, policy issues, as well as academic concerns such as academic freedom, tenure, promotion, classroom size and curriculum.
So why do professors and college faculty need a union?
Collective bargaining gives you collective power. University professors, although people think they have a life that's something that everybody wants, and in fact it is a very good life, what they do need is protection from abuse by managers, just as say auto workers or steel workers do. I mean, you can put too many people in a classroom without compensation. You can give people more advisees than they should rightly handle. Those sorts of issues, and we try to provide protection against those sorts of things. And then there's the policy and academic issues. A collective bargaining agreement protects on a legal level items like tenure and processes like those for promotion. One of the things about something like promotion, without collective bargaining, unilateral determinations of promotion can seem unfair and inequitable.
Well, we're here today with you as you're holding a joint conference with PSEA entitled Conference on Labor in Higher Education.
Right. Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about what the purpose of the overall conference is.
Well, 2 years ago, my Vice President, Amy Walters, who I think is going to be on here in a minute, decided that one of the things missing from our persona is an opportunity to come together like this and talk on an academic level about issues in higher education connected with labor. There are places you can talk about higher ed, there are places you can talk about labor, but there aren't really conferences where the two come together. And since that's our combined mission, as I just discussed, we needed a venue to get out. We have people who have things to say about higher education issues in the context of labor agreements, and this is an opportunity to do so.
Well, what are you seeing as the biggest trends or challenges facing your organization that you think you're going to be addressing over the next day and a half?
In the next day and a half? Well, I know I just came from a session where there was a lot of discussion about economic issues and economic models, with the states in the position they are financially, and the states fund higher education. And it's not a federal appropriation that does so. Obviously, there's a high correlation between those issues financially and what the impact it's going to have on the schools.
What kind of shape is Pennsylvania in?
Not very good, although I say that and I'm glad I'm not New Jersey or California.
It could be worse.
It could be worse.
Okay.
There are only, I think you probably know this, the stats that show there are only like 3 states running any kind of surplus these days, and the other 47 are all struggling. Pennsylvania is not in the worst shape, but on the other hand, they're in a position worse than anybody's seen since at least probably the 30s in terms of the percentage of shortfall in next year's budget.
Well, Tommy, we have 1 minute left here. Tell me, what does this economic impact mean for your members and for students?
Well, for my members, it probably is going to have some impact on the kinds of raises that they see in the future, and you can't imagine it might have some impact on things like premium share for their health care. The trend line is more and more share on that, and as you look at the labor agreements that are being signed these days, the size of the increases are, I know one pops to mind, a 2-year contract, 1% and 2% in the 2 years. So, you know, those are kinds of things you look at and you say, well, you know, when I started in the state system, we had a series of years where we got 5% increases. So,
wow.
You know, there's a big change. In terms of students, I think the big thing we're seeing nationally is a cost shift. The state appropriation isn't covering the size of the institution's budgets that it used to, and so there's a shift to tuition as an income base, and so I think families can count on more tuition increases. I mean, the state system for 6 years has led the nation in the lowest tuition increases in the country, but it doesn't mean there will be a flat line. I think you can count on tuition increases and other increases. So it's going to cost you more.
Well, best wishes with your conference, and thank you very much for being with us here today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's always great to see you.
Okay. We'll be right back on Behind the Headlines.
Behind the Headlines is a production of the Susquehanna Valley Center for Public Policy, a nonpartisan, nonprofit research organization helping Pennsylvania build a brighter future.
We're very pleased to have with us today Mr. Ken Mash, who is the Vice President of APSCUF and also a professor at East Stroudsburg University. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
How's the conference going for you so far?
It's going really well. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to share ideas and to talk about important issues facing higher ed.
We talked a little bit with Mr. Hicks about the economic impact that, well, what the economy, the impact the economy is having on higher education and labor in general. Do you want to give us your sense of that?
Well, I think there's a lot of pressures today because of the economy. We see, you know, the levels of state funding are not where they used to be. There's tuition pressures, which of course determine who gets to go to college too. So it's a real concern for us as far as the resources that are available to the universities to run properly, as far as being able to compensate and get the best faculty and keep the best faculty we can at our universities. So it's a very important time for us, a critical time.
If you were to hope that the conference attendees were to take something away from this, what would it be? What couple of things do you think you'd like them to go home with after this is over?
Well, I'd like them to be able to understand a little bit better about the circumstances that we're in. I'd like them to be able to understand, too, the shared values that we have. This is a conference of PSEA and APSCUF, and the PSEA folks represent a lot of community college faculty, and I think it's an opportunity for us really to see what we have in common and the areas that we could work together on, both politically in the legislature, both in terms of, you know, raising money for the universities and for the community colleges as well, and to see, again, as I said before, that we have shared concerns.
How do you see the economy and affecting students in general across the state?
Well, there's a lot of pressure on our students. Of course, if the tuition goes up, we have students who you know, need to go out and work while they're attending college. We serve a number of first-generation college students, so there's a lot of pressure on them to be able to afford to go to school. But there's also pressures at the university as far as the economy, as far as the universities are concerned, you know, focusing and trying to narrow down the offerings that they give to the students, and I think that in the long term has an impact on the students themselves because the range of courses are not the same for them, and also because there's a lot of economic pressures on the universities. They tend to favor more of those programs that students want, or at least that they say that they want. And so we see a lot of pressure on more traditional humanities areas, liberal arts, sections, and the universities are really under pressure to make those classes large and to trim back wherever they can, which I think hurts the students ultimately.
Well, other than the economic concerns and pressures that all the universities are having, what do you see as some of the biggest challenges that they're facing?
Well, I think, we also run into some concerns about academic freedom, and we're always concerned with that. I just went to a very good panel about
Did
academic
you learn anything
freedom.
new?
I did. Well, I learned about some pressures that some other universities are facing as far as academic freedom. And
well, explain what academic freedom is. What does that mean to the average professor?
Yeah, academic freedom really protects the right of the faculty to to do the research that they are trained to do, to present their subject matter in the way that they feel best, without having somebody look over their shoulder. And when you have people often get, what do you care if somebody's looking over your shoulder? But everybody gets nervous or gets worried when there are people who are looking over and watching what they're doing, or in some very extreme cases where there's been some suggestion that legislators should be determining what's taught in the classroom.
Oh, that's scary.
Which that is pretty scary, because it takes, it takes it away from those people who are experts in their field, and turns it over to the political arena. And really, we believe that higher education, the content of it shouldn't be driven by the politics of the day. It should really be, driven by those people who are experts in their field.
Well, tell me why you think a conference like this is important.
I think it's always important for us to take some time to share ideas, to see the current pressures that the individual universities faces, that the colleges and community colleges face. Again, to share what we have in common, but also to see where we could help each other out too. And I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to work together. The various different unions. We have a representative from the Pennsylvania AAUP coming too. So it's really a good chance for us to meet each other.
And AAUP stands for?
The American Association of University Professors.
Wonderful. Well, I'd like to thank you very much for being here with us today, for joining us, and for sharing your thoughts.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Among the exhibits at this conference were posters done by graduate students at Shippensburg University, which examined future trends in academic labor.
I did my presentation on black football coaches at the Division I level, Division 1A level. Okay, what I found in my research was that as late as 2008, there was only 3.4% of head coaches that were in fact black. Okay. There's a good percentage of assistant coaches that are black in Division 1A football. However, the statistics show that blacks are not getting a fair opportunity to be head coaches at this level.
Reaction of public safety officials on campuses countrywide to the Virginia Tech massacre in 2007, and how that made college professionals and administrations up their budgets and revisit their emergency plans in reaction to the Virginia Tech shooting, because prior to that they really did not have enough funding, and they didn't have enough protocols put in place for anything like that, because nobody really felt that it could happen at their location.